15 years old.
Is that that grayish?
Yeah. That's why he...
Oh, give him in.
That guy's gonna leave.
He is.
He got
Look at him.
He's gonna get the hell out.
Oh, yeah, there's one in the water. Yeah, there's one. Here's the one to the old guy.
They don't chew, huh?
15. How long they lived for, I wonder. How'd you know he was 15?
Somebody at the desk just told us.
Oh.
So Marlene, you got a bird that's like 20 years old?
Yeah. Well, captivity,
Like a
they
real
live
bird.
He's
longer.
trying to get some. She didn't see him yet.
Mom. Mom? Mom?
There he goes. Oh, they keep stealing it from him. The other ones won't let him have one.
This is a lot of food for one penguin. They eat more than one?
Oh, with the long neck. I just noticed something.
He's eating two of them.
Skinny and long.
There you go. About time. Look how he's sleeping. His head. You see that?
Where?
His head like...
Oh. She's resting his head on his back. Will they jump in?
Yeah, they should all slide on their bellies. Do they go in the water?
Oh, look at that big fat white one. Yep.
It's a nice catch.
Do that job. That one is tall.
Yeah.
Stretches his neck out.
No, they're all the bare bottom.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, folks, you can see they're starting to fill up just a little bit this afternoon. One, I no longer have any penguin heads in my bucket, and neither are they quite madly frantically grabbing them out of my hands as they first were when I first arrived. So while I'm feeding them, I am keeping track of how many fish each and every one of our penguins is eating, how many smelt, and also how many anchovies. It is actually really important that we do keep track of their appetites every single feeding, every single day, because it actually tells us a lot about their overall health. Generally how that works is they all have their own individual appetites like us humans. Some are big eaters, some are not so big eaters. As long as they have those normal usual appetites, we know we have happy, healthy penguins. So when there's any change in any one penguin's appetite, there's probably something going on that warrants our attention. Not always our concern, mind you, but it's always a good thing to be aware of. For starters, birds are really good at hiding illnesses, at least until the latter stages, and will obviously really catch any illness well before any latter stage. But mind you, a change in appetite isn't always a bad thing. It's one of our females, and say she's about to lay her 2 eggs, because African penguins generally do lay clutches of 2, is always preceded by a decrease in appetite for about a week to 10 days prior to the laying of the very first egg. Now also, if one of our birds are about to undergo their annual molt, that's where they drop most of their feathers within a relatively short period of time. They then go through a very scruffy stage like Miss Olivia here. They're going to grow them all back nice and new. Now just prior to this annual molt, they actually put on about a lot of weight, probably about 30% of their usual body weight. So when they start bulking up, we know that their annual molt is impending and very soon coming. Now the reason why they do this bulking up period just prior to their annual molt is that it's a natural instinct. Out in the wild, they actually can't go into the water to forage for food while they're waiting for their new feathers to grow in. And that's because it's their feathers that actually give them their weatherproofing and the waterproofing from the cold waters in which they would be hunting for their fish. So during that time, they actually live off all that extra fat that they have stored up. Now mind you, our penguins certainly don't have to worry about that. They do get island-side service twice a day, every day of the year, but they still go through that natural instinct of bulking up just prior to their annual molt. That's exactly what's going on with Miss Olivia here. If you look at her, she's looking awfully scruffy and disheveled. Yeah, not too pretty at the moment. Come back in a couple of weeks, she would have dropped all those feathers and grown them back nice and new. And you might have to take my word for it, but she's a bit more rotund than she usually is. So when we come back in a couple of weeks, she'll be beautiful and much slender, her normal usual body weight. So those are just a few reasons why it is so very important that we do keep track of their appetites every single feeding, every single day. Now that being said, I'm sure a number of you are now wondering how we then tell them apart, right? So they might look awfully similar to one another. Well, it's very much like if you're living at home with a bunch of dogs of the same breed. Say you're living at home with a dozen poodles. I know, kind of a scary thought, but you're going to learn to tell them all apart, and you're going to use subtle differences in appearance and in behavior. And that is exactly what we do with our penguins. Although we do have one added advantage, all of our penguins actually have unique spot configurations on their tummies. So sometimes we'll use that to tell who's who. For example, this penguin right here is Splash. I'm going to try and get her to the front to face you guys. Just look at her tummy, you're going to see she has a big old belly button of spots. Most of her spots are concentrated where a belly button would be. The penguins had belly buttons. So that's how we know Splash is Splash. Now, usually when Olivia isn't looking so scruffy and standing out that way, she stands out because she actually has a white or yellow bill compared to everybody else. Olivia at the top of the stairs makes her very different from everybody else. We also have kind of in the corner at the moment, we have Opus, and she actually doesn't have a lot of black masking on her face, so her face is white compared to everybody else. Very different. Who else is a really good example? We have Miss Tiger here. She has a wonderful beauty spot over one eye, like she's a little movie star. And then we have Sweet Pea, who is the queen of the island. She actually has two very dominant spots right over where her heart would be. If we do her like a little cartoon character. See if I can get her to face you guys a little bit. This penguin right there. She has two spots right over her heart. So those are some two different subtle differences that we do use to tell who's who. It's actually quite easy because once you know what to look for, those really subtle differences, not so subtle anymore. They actually stand out like very big sore thumbs. So that's how we do tell our penguins from one another. It's actually quite easy, like I said, once you know what to look for. Now that being said, I'm sure a number of you are also wondering how we even have penguins in Las Vegas, right? Get that question a lot, especially during our summer. And I think that stems from the fact, well, the question stems from the fact that most of us, when we think of penguins, we think of the cold, the snow, and Antarctica, right? Because that's where penguins live. Yeah? I'll give you that some penguins live there, but not all of them, not even half of them. As it turns out, there actually are 17 penguin species throughout the world, at least the southern hemisphere, yet less than half of those penguin species actually live in Antarctica or even visit Antarctica at any point in their whole entire lives. The rest of your penguin species you're actually going to find in more tropical and temperate areas like New Guinea, New Zealand, Australia, South America. Even as close to the equator as the Galapagos Islands and right off the coast of Ecuador, very far from Antarctica. You're also going to be able to find penguins in South Africa. This is where you're going to find our species of penguin, the African penguin, also known as the black-footed penguin, because they simply have black feet. As it turns out, this species of penguin is considered a tropical penguin species. And that's because they're most comfortable in temperatures from the mid-40s to the mid-80s, but 100 degrees is not a problem whatsoever for African penguins. Very different than those temperatures that you would find in Antarctica. Now, certainly, in the height of our summer, we do get above 100 degrees, so we actually install a misting system on the island that actually cools the island during the height of our summer. It's all very fancy, temperature triggered and temperature regulated. And then during our winters, it doesn't get too cold, but some of the nights in the height of our winter, usually December and January, a little bit of February, the nights certainly get below 45 degrees. So we actually keep the island for our penguins during that time. So that is how you do have happy, healthy penguins in the middle of the Mojave Desert, right off the Las Vegas Strip. One, choose your penguin species wisely. We're not trying to keep Antarctic penguins here. We need to give it a second thought, let alone a first. And then quite simply, just give them everything and anything that they need. And a little extra, of course. Now, certainly there are some really interesting differences between tropical penguins, like our African penguins here, and those that you would find in Antarctica. For starters, Antarctic penguins are going to have feathers on their legs. They're going to need that extra layer of warmth and insulation living in cold climates. If you look at the legs of our penguins, you're going to see being a warm weather species of penguin actually do not have feathers on their legs. They don't need them. Also, tropical penguins, quite interestingly, have a featherless patch on their face. The location of this patch on the face does vary from tropical penguin species to tropical penguin species. If you just look around the eyes of our penguins, you're going to see a very pale pink area. That's where their featherless patch is, and you're just simply seeing their pink penguin skin. Now what this is, it's almost like a little penguin air conditioning system when they get hot or overheated in any way. Remember, they're living in warmer climates. When they get hot, it actually becomes flushed with blood, this patch. And that's it. It's going to appear brighter pink or more red in color and actually gets about as bright pink as my bubble gum pink blood here. Now, since this blood is next to the relatively cooler air, it's going to get cooled. And then that, in turn, is going to flow back into the body to then cool the body. So that's how their little penguin air conditioning system works. It's a trait that's very unique to tropical penguin species. Now, penguins certainly are true birds. They do have feathers, they do lay eggs, and they are warm-blooded. I think one of the more interesting differences, though, between penguins and birds that fly in the air, the birds that fly in the air are actually going to have hollow bones. They're going to need them to stay aloft. Penguins, not too interested in flying in the air. They do fly in the water. They do actually use their wings to propel themselves through the water. So that does indeed make it flying and not swimming. But as it turns out, they do not have hollow bones. It's probably a very good thing considering the amount of time that they do spend in and around and under the water. Now, does anybody have any questions for me about these guys? Look at they're nice and full. Everybody's having a little post-fish nap up here. Their eyes are dozing. Any questions?
How long do they live?
African penguins in the wild are going to reach about their mid-teens. When they come and live with us humans, about mid-20s. Miss Olivia, the very scruffy one at the moment, undergoing her molt with the white bill. She actually turned 27 last week. So she's getting up there in the African penguin ages. But I have figured out her secret, though. Her boyfriend is the most handsome penguin here. Her boyfriend is true penguin mom. He's 7. Yes, for the individuals. Oh, are they expecting eggs at the moment? Not that we know. We haven't seen any copulating or any nest building at the moment. For the individuals here have been hatched here. Yeah. Okay. Incubation time is 38 to 42 days for African penguins. And both the male and the female take turns sitting on the eggs. It's usually about 50-50.
How long have you been doing that?
How long have I been here? About a year. Any other questions this afternoon?
How big do the biggest species of penguins get?
The biggest penguin species is going to be your emperor penguins, and they're going to reach about a little bit above 3 feet tall. So these guys are on the smaller side, but they are still not the smallest penguin species. Close, but not quite. Any more this afternoon, folks? No? All right. I'm sorry.
Can they eat salt with other birds?
They have to eat salt. Well, they actually no. There is a salt gland penguin study going on, but it's actually taking a long time to undergo that study because the only way you can actually study their salt gland is from a penguin who's no longer breathing, put it that way. So of course we're going to have to wait for you have a specimen who's died naturally to undergo all these testing. But they're thinking that they usually feed them saltwater fish because they're the right size. That's usually what they prefer. So they generally do get all the salt from the actual saltwater fish. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
Very good. Very good.
Thanks so much for dropping by this afternoon, folks. Please remember that our African penguins do get fed twice a day, once at 8:30 in the morning, and again just like today at 3 in the afternoon. We encourage you to drop by repeatedly just because, well, no meeting is ever quite the same because these guys are always up to different antics. So thanks again for dropping by. Have a wonderful and lucky day.